Wishing everyone a Chag Sameach. Looking forward to spending Yontif with those that will be in town. I want to share one theme that we see multiple times throughout the Haggadah, and I want to begin really by asking a question that I think is a pretty provocative, pretty intriguing question. We know that obviously there are 10 plagues, there are 10 makos, and I think it's rational, it's logical to think that there is some type of ascending order of seriousness or intensity to the plagues. And obviously it crescendos with makas bechoros, with the killing of the firstborn. And it would make sense then that darkness, that the Makkah of Choshech, Makkah number 9, was the second most intense, second most severe of all of the plagues. But darkness doesn't really seem like it is so harsh, that it is so intrusive. So why is it? What made Choshech so difficult? So Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, in his commentary on Chumash, says a beautiful idea. So we know that the pasuk says, "Vayed Moshe yado ala shamayim," that Moshe Rabbeinu lifts his hand, his staff up to the shamayim. Vayichoshech afel. There was this very thick darkness. Bechol eretz Mitzrayim shloshet yamim. But for 3 days there was this intense, very, very thick darkness. And then the pasuk says, "Lo ra'u ish et achiv," that a person could not see their brother, a person could not see their friend, a person could not see another person. When we go through difficult times in our lives, it always helps when we have somebody around us. But this idea of loneliness and isolation and a person feeling completely alone was ultimately the harshness of the plague of Choshech. Darkness was, not that it was dark, not that it was scary, but the real intense scare, the real intense fear that a person had was the fact that he felt completely alone. And that is just to contextualize and to contemporize this idea. Feeling alone, not feeling part of community is very, very detrimental to a person's social and emotional and mental well-being. And that behooves all of us to reach out to those, to try to be more inclusive of all those in our community. We see this in another beautiful, beautiful idea. We know that the whole story is of Pesach is a rags to riches story. It's a avdus, lecherus, slavery to freedom. And one way that we exhibit, one way that we demonstrate our freedom, our cherus, during the Pesach Seder is through, it's a machlokas, it's a discussion whether it's an independent mitzvah or not, but we lean at the Seder. Kulanu misubin, we all recline, definitely during matzah, as well as during the Arba Kosos. So the Gemara in Pesachim teaches us that Abaye Tashma, we learned in a brayso, in a proof from a brayso. Amar Abaye teaches us, Ki avinan beimar Zigenon abirchei dehadadi. That Abaye taught when he was reminiscing about his days when he was in his Rebbe's house, at his Rebbe's Seder, and who was Abaye's Rebbe? His Rebbe was Rabbi. That there really wasn't enough room for everybody to lean at the Seder, so everyone reclined abirchei dehadadi. They all reclined, they all leaned on each other's knees, that there were a bunch of people, there were kids, there were yeshiva bachrim, that they were all leaning. They couldn't lean on let's say, a wall, they couldn't lean on a pillow. What they ultimately leaned on was each other. And Rav Soloveitchik writes that if a person has a chair, right, a person has a chair that they want to recline on, they have to be reclining on something. They can't just lean to the left. We know that we lean to the left, but they can't just lean to the left and just hold it. They have to be leaning, they have to be putting their weight on something. And Rav Soloveitchik writes in his Haggadah called the Siach Hagrid, he says a really beautiful idea. He says that Davka, Abaye, and the students were leaning on each other, because that's how you bring about cherus. That's how you get through difficult times in life, is by leaning dafka on each other. You have to have a community. You have to have people to lean on. If you can't rely on those people, you can't lean on those people. So ultimately, there's a lack of freedom in a person's life. And obviously, community really starts at home. And the Korban Pesach, if we look in Perek Yud Bet, in Sefer Shemot, when we talk all about the Korban Pesach, so really there's one word that you see throughout the entire Perek, and that is bayit, 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 bayit. That home, The home is where the Korban Pesach was eaten. The bayis, the home was the place where Geula began. They ate the korban, they got ready, they ate the Korban Pesach there, and then all of a sudden they were ready to go. So we see this idea throughout the Seder. We see in Choshech, the intensity of the darkness. The darkness of the darkness was the fact that they fell alone. We're going to think about when we recline, when we do Heseba during the Daled Kosos, as well as when we eat the matzah. Some have the minhag, according to the Rambam, to recline the entire meal. That seems difficult to me, but some have that minhag. The Rambam probably felt that Heseba was an independent mitzvah. But the idea is that I'm leaning, I have to have someone to lean on. I have to have a community, I have to have people to lean on throughout my life. And finally, ultimately, the most important people to lean on is my family. And that we see through the many times that the word bayis is used in the Korban Pesach, which ultimately is the springboard towards Geula, towards redemption, towards Yetzias Mitzrayim. This should be a year. It should be a Seder, it should be a Pesach, and it should be a year filled with community, filled with people to rely on, and people should be able to rely on us. And we should be there for others, just as others are there for us. Chag Sameach.